Okay, and welcome back, students who are taking Math for Business and Finance and Math Applications. We're working on the Chapter 12 word problems, the odd-numbered problems that are assigned to you in the digital study guide. Okay, um, so let's just get started since we've pretty much covered everything we needed to in the theory videos and the drill problem videos. Of course, I'm going to bounce back and forth between these tables here as we work on these word problems. So there'll be that back and forth. So be prepared for that. Okay. And remember, you can pause and rewind and watch the video again to pick something up. And if you have any questions, of course, telephone or email an instructor. Okay, so word problem 12-13. Okay, it says Lynn Alley, owner of the local Subway shop, loaned $40,000 to Pete Hall to help him open a Subway franchise. Pete plans to repay Lynn at the end of 8 years with 6% interest compounded semi-annually. Right? So the principal is 40,000. The term, the number of periods is 8 years. The rate is 6%, and it's compounded semi-annually. So how much will Lynn receive at the end of 8 years? So if we just quickly draw a timeline, this is what I envision in my head when I'm reading this problem. I'm starting out here at my present value of $40,000, okay? And 8 years later, okay, so this entire time frame is 8 years. So this is future, okay? This is the present value. So I have 8 years, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 years. Now you don't have to put in the hash marks. I just did that just to give a little bit more solidity to this timeline. And we know that the interest rate is 6%. Okay, so that's 6%. Okay, so it's asking how much will Lynn receive at the end of 8 years, the future value here. Okay, well, if we're compounding semi-annually, what that means is we're compounding the interest, twice a year, semi-annually. So you have to, I mean, I'm going to do this in blue just to give you a visual representation. But what I'm doing is I'm dividing it in half. So there's two halves for the first year, and then the second year, and the third year, and the fourth year, and the fifth year, and the sixth year, and the seventh year, and the eighth year. So now, as you can see, instead of having 8 periods, I actually have 16 periods. Why? Because when I take the number of periods, I multiply by the amount of compounding. So I have 8 years at semi-annually or twice, so that gives me 16 periods. And for the interest rate, if this is 6% a year and it's compounded semi-annually, that means it's 3% here and 3% here. Okay, so we take the 6% and we divide that by the number of compounding periods, or 3%. So I'm going to be using 16 periods at 3% on my table. And to do that, I jump up to my future value table and look at 3% for 16 periods, and I use a factor of 1.6047. Okay, so then I'm coming back down here, and I'm taking the $40,000 times the 1.6047. Oops. 6047, that's the factor. And when I multiply those two out, I end up with $64,188 at the end of the 8 years. Okay, and that makes sense because why I'm starting out with 40,000 and you know, if I'm getting interest on interest, I should have more than 40,000 at the end of 8 years. Okay, so that's the answer to that problem. Relatively simple, right? And remember to watch the process, the steps. Okay, this is basically going to be quite repetitive, and you'll see it being done over and over and over. Okay, so problem 12-15. Melvin in decision had difficulty deciding whether to put his savings in Mystic Bank or Four Rivers Bank. Mystic offers 10% interest compounded semi-annually. Okay, so here's Mystic, and this is Four Rivers. Okay, so Mystic offers 10% compounded semi-annually. Four Rivers offers 8% compounded quarterly. Melvin has 10,000 to invest, so that's the principal amount. He expects to withdraw the money at the end of 4 years, so that's the time frame. Okay, 4 years. Which bank gives Melvin the better deal? And check your answer. Okay, so he's investing $10,000 today, so that's the present value, and we want to know which bank gives the better deal, so that's the future value, right? Because why? I put my 10,000 in, and I'm going to leave it there and see how much I get in the future. So for Mystic, okay, semi-annually means twice a year. Okay, so if it's for 4 years at compounding twice a year, that's 8 periods. And if I have 10%, I'm going to divide by 2, and that means I'm getting 5% per compounding period. Now I go back up to the future value table, and I'm looking for the 5% and for the 8 number of periods. So my future value table is 5% for 8 number of periods, or 1.4775. Okay, so my factor is 1.4775, and of course I'm investing $10,000, so I multiply the $10,000 by the factor, or I could just multiply by 10,000, and I end up with $14,775. All right, that's the future value of that investment. So now when we look at Four Rivers, this is a compound quarterly, which is 4 times a year. Okay, so if I have 4 years at 4 times a year, that's 16 compounding periods. And if it's at 8%, I divide by 4, and that means I get 2% per compounding period. So when I go up to the future value chart, I'm going to be looking for 2% over 16 periods. So here I have 2% for 16 periods, and the value was 1.3728. Now, I really don't need to do the math, because I can see that I'm going to get more money. I should have used a green. Okay, I could see that the difference between the two here, one is 1.4775. That's greater than the 1.3728. So I know that Mystic is a better deal just by looking at the factor. I actually don't need to go back and do the math in order to figure out how much the future value actually is. Although when I do that, remember the factor here is 1.3, what was it, 3728. And when I multiply that by 10,000, I get $13,728. Okay, so which is greater? Obviously Mystic is greater, so that's the better value, the better deal, and that's the one I would take. Okay. and you know, and it notice that all I needed to do was just compare the two factors, because why? The $10,000 principal is a static. It's a constant. It didn't matter whether it's 10,000, 15,000, or even $320. Okay, it doesn't matter how much that amount is. What matters is the difference in the factor, because you know, everything else is equal. Okay, so that's you know, that problem, and I hope you understood that. And I'll see you in the next video. If not, you know, definitely watch the video again, or call and speak with an instructor. Okay.